Finally, we're going to talk about the mechanics of the harp. When I play a scale like this on the harp, it's a diatonic scale. There are no sharps, no flats. That would be just like all of the white keys on the piano. So the problem of chromaticism, of how to create sharps and flats, has been a problem for the ages with the harp. And harp makers have tried a lot of different solutions over the centuries, but the idea of levers has been around and thriving for a long time. So if we use this F as an example, if I play it with the lever disengaged, it sounds like this. Then if I go ahead and engage the lever, the sound changes. It becomes a little bit higher. And from a mechanical standpoint, what's happening is that the lever is pinching the string, so it's shortening the vibrating length of the string, and the shorter the string, the higher the pitch. In musical terms, this is an F and this is an F sharp. Each of these levers is a half-step lever. They can raise the pitch by a half step or a semitone. On a lever harp with a full set of levers, that is one lever per string, you can play in 8 different keys. And which 8 keys you can play in depends on how you tune your harp. Most serious lever harpists tune their harp in the key of E flat with 3 flats. So then when the levers are disengaged, some of the strings are flat and some of the strings are natural. And depending on how you set your levers, those 8 keys then would be C, F, B flat, E flat, G, D, A, and E. For many styles of music, particularly different types of folk music, only being able to play in 8 keys is perfectly sufficient. So if you were to go see a professional folk harpist or a professional Celtic harpist perform, they would perform on a lever harp. Most students start off by playing a lever harp. Some stick with a lever harp for their entire careers. For others, if they're interested in playing complex classical music or just music with a lot of chromaticism and using a lot of different keys, at a certain point they find that they need to switch to a pedal harp. The reason for this switch is that over time it became clear that the lever harp wasn't able to keep up with other orchestral instruments. There are 3 main drawbacks. One drawback is that you have to move the levers with your left hand. So that means that you might be playing along and then you have to stop playing with your left hand and reach up and change a lever. And this can be really awkward. Even if your right hand keeps playing, sometimes there's kind of a hole in the music where your left hand has, dropped out. The second drawback is that you have to change each lever individually. So if you're in the key of C and you want to go to the key of G where you add an F sharp, you have to move each F lever for all of the F strings individually, and that takes a lot of time. And then of course the final drawback is that you can only play in 8 keys. You cannot play in all of the keys. So what some clever harp makers did was they kept the lever mechanism, the mechanism of pinching the strings to shorten them, but they connected it to pedals down around the base of the harp. So they connected all of the mechanism inside the harp, and then they put these long rods in the column. The column of a pedal harp is always hollow, and then those rods in turn connected to the foot pedals around the base of the harp. And this was great because right off it solved the first of our difficulties. If you can control the pinching mechanism, the lever mechanism up here with your feet, you can keep playing with both hands and have your feet change the pitch of the strings at the same time. There were a few more steps to refine this new mechanical process on the harp. One of the first problems was that of physical space. On the lever harp, you have a lever per string, and on the pedal harp, each string still has its own individual mechanism, but you cannot then in turn connect the individual mechanisms to individual pedals. Even if you had a slightly smaller pedal harp than this, say with 44 strings, you could not have 44 pedals around the base of the harp. There's no physical way to fit that many pedals on a harp. What harp makers did was to connect each pedal to an entire group of strings rather than to individual strings. And the obvious way to do this was by the pitch or the letter. So they took all of the C strings and connected them to the same pedal. And then there's a pedal that controls the pinching mechanism for all of the D strings simultaneously, and so forth and so on. There are 7 pitches per octave, C, D, E, F, G, A, and B, so there are 7 pedals around the base of the harp. This also solves the second difficulty, which is that it took a long time to modulate because you had to move each lever individually, all of the Fs one at a time. So now if we were in the key of C and we wanted to modulate to the key of G, you just have to move one pedal and all of the Fs have changed to sharp and your entire harp is now in the key of G. Finally, and this last change took quite some time to come about, pedal harp makers came up with the idea of what is essentially adding a second row of levers to all of the strings. If you remember on the lever harp, there were 2 choices per string, the sound with the lever disengaged or with the lever engaged. But in the pedal harp, they went ahead and added another row of the pinching mechanism. So rather than just 2 choices per string, now you have 3 choices per string. Let's go ahead and use this D string right here as an example. So right now, the string is in its longest position. It's vibrating from here on down to the base of the string. And if I play it, it sounds like this. If I go ahead and move the pedal, pinch the string, so you'll see this first disc here, our pinching mechanism fully rotate and pinch the string right here. That has shortened the string and raised the sound. If I move the pedal again, this disc will finish rotating fully, and now the string is pinched right here, shortening it even further. In musical terms, we have a D flat, a D natural, and a D sharp. Those are the 3 positions of each string, flat, natural, and sharp. And this is really exciting because it solved our third and final problem. On the lever harp, you could only play in 8 keys, but with each string having 3 positions rather than 2, now you can play in all of the keys. Of course, this approach to chromaticism is a little bit strange because then we physically have a D sharp and an E flat on separate strings. A D sharp and an E flat always sound the same, and on most instruments you play them the exact same way too. Here they still sound the same, but you physically play them differently. And the nice thing about having this, all these enharmonics equivalents kind of built into the harp, is that that's how we can play so many beautiful glissandos, because you can double up some of the pitches of your strings and play something like a pentatonic glissando. You might be wondering how all of this looks from the base of the harp. So here we have the 7 pedals. You can see that there are 3 on the left side, which are controlled by the left foot, and 4 on the right side, which are controlled by the right foot. The order of the pedals is a little bit strange, but here it is. Going from left to right, we have D, C, B, and then E, F, G, and A. You can see that each pedal has 3 different notches. Those are for the 3 different positions of the string, and you can lock the pedal in. If we use the C pedal here for an example, right now all of the C strings are in flat. Then if I move the pedal down and lock it into its notch, they become natural. And then if I move it down again and lock it into its notch, they become sharp. And all of the pedals work that way. The 3 notches are the same, flat, natural, and sharp. Many people find that the position of the notches are opposite of what they want. They would like sharp to be the topmost and flat to be the bottommost. But the pedals match the positions of the string, and that's how we came up with the system. Most people don't realize quite how complex it is, but on the pedal harp, there are over 2,000 moving parts within this system. In conclusion, I hope that you found all of this information helpful, and maybe you understand a bit more now about how the harp is played and how the instrument itself functions. If you're considering learning to play the harp, then naturally I want to encourage you to do so, and just wish you luck in all of your endeavors with the harp.